Next video, ranking every villain in Star Wars from best to worst. Lock in.
What makes a bad villain? Look no further than Reva from the Kenobi show. She becomes a bad guy just so she can try to kill Vader. Like that was ever gonna happen. Or Kylo Ren. You'd think being a crying man-child is bad enough, but he keeps losing to Rey again and again. It got so bad that he just gave up and sacrificed himself for her. Those are F-tier villains. So what are great villains like? How about Darth Vader?
Wow! I do not think Kylo Ren was an F-tier villain. Bro, the amount of things around him, like, I know he lost to Rey, which is horrible scripting, but the grandson of Vader and the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa, and you're saying that this guy's an F tier, and he's got so much rage built inside of him. He is a natural born Sith, you know, and he might have turned good at the end, but he does not deserve to be an F tier, honestly.
He's menacing, powerful, full of hatred and anger. Vader's clearly an S-tier villain, but he's not even the best on this list. That's because Star Wars is such a vast universe with so many different villains, from Sith and bounty hunters to witches and commanders. And I'm going to be ranking them all in this video. And at the end, I'll crown one villain as the best of the best, raising them up to S-tier plus, and another as the worst of the worst, putting them in F minus. So be sure to watch all the way through to see where your favorite villain is ranked. Remember how I said witches were on the list? That's because of Mother Talzin, the witch from Dathomir. She's pretty powerful in her own right. She made Savage Opress, helped to resurrect Maul, and played a part in raising up the zombie army to defend Dathomir. Sidious was scared enough of her that he made sure she was taken out, and Grievous did that pretty easily. She's decent enough, so we'll give her a C tier ranking. If it weren't for Talzin, we wouldn't have gotten to see Maul become the amazing villain he is through the Clone Wars show. Maul is an interesting case. He always got owned by Obi-Wan, and he lost to Ahsoka when it mattered most. But he has a talent for surviving and building armies to make a name for himself. He single-handedly took over Mandalore, a world known for its warriors. No outsider had previously been able to control the Mandalorians like Maul did. He is completely and totally filled with selfish ambition and a pure hatred for his enemies. His story is easily one of the most compelling in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, but he had so much potential for the movies as well. Like, if they didn't fuck him up in the movie, well, they didn't fuck him up in the movies, but he could have had so much more as well. But in the movies, if he got more, you know, screen time and maybe another movie, then he would be a better Sith than Darth Vader, honestly. Because him, Clone Wars and Rebels, Maul was better than Phantom Menace, Maul, obviously. But it was also good to see him in, what was it, Rogue One or Solo? One of the, I think it was Solo. But yeah, he had so much potential for the movies just to get split in half by a Padawan, you know. But it is good character building for Obi-Wan, but, you know, Maul could have came back in one of the future movies. But yeah, they kind of ruined him a tiny bit in the movies.
I think he deserves an A-tier ranking. No more, no less. His brother Savage is similar to Maul in a lot of ways. Savage's reign of terror left the Jedi scrambling, as Savage single-handedly raided temples and wiped out groups of Jedi to lure out Kenobi. As a character though, Savage lacks depth. He's a brute with almost zero intelligence. He rarely makes decisions for himself and lets Maul lord over him in almost every way. His entire existence in the Clone Wars show is literally just to bring Maul back, and at the end of everything, Sidious wipes the floor with him. Just like Mother Talzin, who created him, Savage is going in the C tier. Savage was pretty important in taking.
Nah. I'd say it's the one above C tier, but he had potential to be in the same tier as Maul. Like he said, he let Maul turn over him, but he could add so much more potential, but he still doesn't deserve to be that low on the list. He's still a menace, to be fair.
Taking over Mandalore with Maul though. Equally important was their ally in the Death Watch, Pre Vizsla. This guy is really annoying to me. His entire personality rubs me the wrong way. He's constantly plotting things, but he never takes action. For the longest time, Pre Vizsla wanted Death Watch to retake Mandalore, but nothing ever happened. And then the instant Maul was in charge, Death Watch succeeded. While Maul essentially ruled in his place, this man Pre Vizsla was constantly saying bad things about Maul, as if he was still the leader, but he never did anything to defend his spot. So of course, when the time came, Maul easily beat Pre Vizsla in a fight, humiliated him, and beheaded him for good measure. D tier. Pre-Vizsla's fellow villain Jango Fett is a much better Mandalorian though, as a fighter and as a character. You gotta love Jango just for the fact that he was the template for the clone army. It's a testament to his perfection. Jango was widely known and feared as the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. He killed many Jedi, some with his bare hands. In his on-screen appearances, Jango holds his own. He basically had Obi-Wan beat, and if it hadn't been for the passing Owiha, Obi-Wan might have died right there on Kamino. And while Mace Windu takes him out fairly easily, you have to remember how hectic the battle in the arena was. Jango couldn't have accounted for the passing Reek to run him over and mess up his jetpack. Definitely a B-tier villain. His son Boba will also join him in the B-tier. Boba is an amazing bounty hunter in his own right. There's a reason Vader personally recruited him as his top hunter. Boba was personally trained by the likes of Aurra Sing, Cad Bane, Boss, some of the greatest bounty hunters of all time. Unfortunately, Boba followed in the footsteps of his dad, nearly dying after Han took out his jetpack. His main teacher was Aurra Sing, as I mentioned earlier. She's a good hunter, but not as good as the Fets. Most of her jobs are failures in the Clone Wars show, whether it's trying to take out Mace Windu or attempting to assassinate Padme. D-tier. One of Aurra's main employers was none other than Zero the Hutt. He's a totally incompetent crime boss. From the Clone Wars movie, his plot to kidnap Rada the Huttlet failed.
I hate Zero. I just fucking hate Zero. You know, Jabba is probably one of the only Hutts that I like. Maybe the Hutt Jedi. I can't remember the Hutt Jedi's name, but Jabba Hutt's probably one of the only Hutts that I actually like in the Star Wars franchise.
That landed him in prison, and no good villain should stay captured for long. Once he's out though, his obsession with his girlfriend is his downfall. Their relationship is extremely stupid, and you'd think Zero would have figured out she was playing him at some point. But no, he's a certified idiot. Zero, you can join Reva and Kylo Ren in the good old F tier. The only reason Zero even got out of prison in the first place was because he had dirt on the rest of the Hutts. So Jabba orchestrated a plan to break him out, because obviously Zero could never do that on his own. Unlike his nephew, Jabba is a much better and more competent villain. Jabba's rule on Tatooine was completely uncontested due to the small army of mercenaries and hunters making up his cartel. It's clear that Jabba stands on business. Other rulers might let debts go, but Jabba continued to hunt down Han until Han paid what he owed. I'm sure Jabba did the same to many others as well. His rule on Tatooine aside, it's clear that Jabba had a galactic reach as well. He was able to hire the hunters to take the Senate hostage all the way on Coruscant. He was also able to hire the big name hunters like Boba Fett, who was exclusively on his and Vader's payrolls. He's a solid crime boss for sure. C tier. A less solid crime boss would be Dryden Voss. He's the leader of Crimson Dawn from the Solo movie. Crimson Dawn is a vast organization, not quite comparable to the Hutts, but still pretty far up on the totem pole of Star Wars syndicates. Voss is probably just as good of a leader as Jabba, except he wasn't technically the boss. Just like Pre-Vizsla, he ultimately answered to Maul, so Dryden Voss is more of a puppet manager than anything else. Because of this, he had to be more hands-on with the dealings of his organization, which was his downfall. Having to personally make transactions and deals between different smugglers and bounty hunters is dangerous for anyone, so it was only a matter of time before someone got him. It just so happened that Han and Kira were the ones to do it. D tier. I know we're already pretty far in, but I think now is a good time to tell you how I'm ranking these villains. I'm ranking canon villains only with a couple of exceptions. My main criteria for a good villain is their accomplishments, specifically what they do on screen in Star Wars movies and shows. How evil are they? Do they die a good death against a good opponent? Things like that. With that in mind, that's why I'm ranking Pong Krell as an A tier villain. I don't think there's a single character that's more hated in Star Wars than Pong Krell. There's literally an entire subreddit dedicated to hating him. That's how you know you're a good villain. To me, the main thing stopping him from being an S tier villain is the fact that he was eventually captured and then executed by Dogma. Sure, he took down a lot of clones with him against crazy odds, but still. Joining Pong Krell in the A tier is his master, Count Dooku. Dooku is a really complex villain. He's not evil through and through, but he's got his mindset on taking down the Republic and eventually overthrowing Sidious, and he'll do whatever it takes to get there. He gets all the credit for bringing the Separatist Alliance together to fight the Republic. Granted, Palpatine was behind the scenes the whole time, but Dooku did a lot of the heavy lifting to get the Clone Wars started. He was also one of the best duelists in the galaxy, using his unique methods with a curved lightsaber hilt to take down many opponents. He owned Obi-Wan in both of their confrontations in the movies. He took on Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda on Geonosis, not to mention the numerous duels he had.
Yeah, but one of my hot takes is that he shouldn't have died so early in Revenge of the Sith. I think he should have gotten out of that alive, because he had Palpatine captured, he had lots of troops, and he had Obi-Wan knocked out, and it was literally only Anakin. Like, the amount of plot armor that went to Anakin and Obi-Wan was insane in that. He should have survived though, because in episode 2, literally in one battle, you had Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting him, and then after they fought him and lost, Yoda fought him, and he was still able to get away. And so how has he been downgraded so much by that in the second movie, and then in the third movie he has both his hands chopped off and then his head chopped off by Anakin? It actually makes no sense at all.
Throughout the Clone Wars show against the Jedi and his apprentices. Ventress, for example, fought Dooku after she and her Night Sister friends tried to assassinate him. Ventress is such an underrated villain. She took on Obi-Wan and Anakin at the same time on multiple occasions and held her own. She may not have been the strongest, but she could give them a challenge, as well as other Jedi like Ahsoka, or villains like Grievous, Maul, and Savage. She holds the unique accomplishment of nearly stealing Jango Fett's DNA from Kamino, which is something no one else ever came close to doing. That could have ended the entire Clone Wars right there. Like I said though, she simply isn't as strong as the top dogs, so I think Ventress will fit best in B tier. You might remember that Ventress was first introduced in the original Clone Wars show from 2003 when she was recruited by Dooku. At roughly the same time, the Separatists also recruited the bounty hunter Dirge. Dirge is extremely overpowered. Even after Obi-Wan and his troops blasted Dirge into sludge, Dirge managed to come back. As a matter of fact, he kept coming back. That's because Dirge's species has special regenerative properties that basically makes them invincible to most weapons. When you combine that with his insane skills in hand-to-hand combat and his ability to use practically any weapon available, he was a force to be reckoned with. In fact, he was causing so much trouble for the Republic during the war that the Jedi went to great lengths to take him out. And they finally did when Anakin trapped Dirge in an escape pod and launched it straight into a nearby star. Dirge is definitely an A-tier villain if you ask me. While I'm on the subject of bounty hunters, I've got to talk about Cad Bane. If you watched my old ranking bounty hunters video,
Oh, Cad Bane. Whenever I'm talking about like bounty hunters and like the best bounty hunters, like and the bounty hunters with like the most aura and that, it comes down to the Fets and also Cad Bane. But I honestly still think Cad Bane has more aura than both of them. Not combined, but just both of them 1-on-1. Cad Bane's aura cannot be matched, honestly.
which I definitely need to redo. You know that I ranked Cad Bane as the #1 best bounty hunter in the galaxy.
Yep, this guy gets it. Yep, this guy gets it. The best bounty hunter.
Granted, I didn't include Dirge in that ranking because I didn't actually know he was canon at the time. But anyway, you get the idea. I love Cad Bane as a bounty hunter. From holding the Senate hostage to stealing holocrons and kidnapping Jedi Masters, this man has done it all. He fearlessly went head-to-head with numerous Jedi, including Obi-Wan and Quinlan Vos at the same time. And also, his entire personality and demeanor is just really cool to me. His trademark hat, rocket boots, and dual pistols are a really complete look. He did die an unfortunate death at the hands of Disney Boba Fett though, so Cad Bane's gonna have to stick to the B tier. Disney does have a habit of ruining legacy characters. They also have the incredible ability to create awful new ones too. Just to clarify, I'm not biased against the characters in the sequel trilogy just because they're made by Disney, although that is bad. I just don't like them because the vast majority are genuinely horribly written characters. Like General Hux, for example, who actually started out looking really dope in the fourth.
Yeah, this guy was insane, and then the speech there, he had so much dedication, he killed so much people and destroyed so much planets, and the fuck do you mean he is the traitor after doing all that? Like, he could have became one of the best Star Wars villains of all time. I'm not even bullshitting. One of the best Star Wars villains of all time. I don't care that he was Disney. I don't care about any other villains. He could have been the best villain of all time, but this guy becomes a what? A traitor? Like, after all that? Like, what?
Awakens. His speech at Starkiller Base seriously gave me chills, but from there it was a steady downward decline. It started with his stupid conversation with Poe at the beginning of The Last Jedi. Throughout that movie, he repeatedly acts incompetent and completely unaware of the situation at hand, and then he says stupid lines on top of that. The Rise of Skywalker helps all that to make sense though. Turns out he was a spy for the Resistance the whole time, so he gets knocked to the floor yet again and promptly executed. This is probably the next easiest F tier of my life. Or what about the First Order's head honcho, the almighty Supreme Leader Snoke, who was killed off in his first actual on-screen appearance? Yet again, The Rise of Skywalker clears that all up for us. He was just a puppet for old Palpy this whole time. I can hear the F tier calling for you, buddy. And last but not least from the sequels, there's Captain Phasma. She's the usual case of being a cool character with a lot of potential that falls flat. It doesn't take much for Han, Finn, and the gang to kidnap her and get the information they need. And then when Phasma and Finn battle it out, it's an easy dub for Finn. That doesn't look good on her considering she's the highest ranking trooper in the the First Order. I like her armor, so she can get the D as well. D tier, I mean. Phasma's a bad example of a captain. On the other end of the spectrum, you get people in the B tier, like Captain Peleon of the Chimera crew. Peleon's knowledge and skill far exceeds his rank. He was a good commander, caring for his subordinates but maintaining a tight ship, and at one point he even commanded the entire Imperial remnant. He became the leader he was by spending significant time around the Chimera's helmsman, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn is the single greatest tactical and military genius in the galaxy, so it's no wonder that Peleon gleaned insane amounts of strategic knowledge from him. He has the unique ability to study a species' art and culture to predict their military movements, and it worked to an insane degree. Whether it was a rebellious planet in the Outer Rim, or the entire strength of the New Republic against him, Thrawn found a way to succeed. The few times he was beaten, like Lothal, it was because of something so preposterous or lucky that even Thrawn couldn't have accounted for it. With far less forces at his disposal after Endor, Thrawn single-handedly waged war with the New Republic and even attacked Coruscant itself, which very few have ever achieved. S tier. The other most notable instance where a military successfully attacked Coruscant was when the Separatists kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine under the command of General Grievous. Grievous is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. When I saw Revenge of the Sith for the first time, I couldn't believe one person could wield 4 lightsabers at once. That's just downright awesome. Now granted, Grievous kinda sucks in the rest of the movie. He barely gets introduced before he's taken out by Obi-Wan, and his decision making is questionable at best. But in his appearances in both Clone Wars shows, particularly the 2003 version, he lives up to his Jedi killer reputation. Unless he's going up against Obi-Wan or some Jedi with plot armor, he's completely obliterating entire clone platoons with almost zero help from his battle droids. And he adds a spare share of lightsabers to his collection along the way. Considering Grievous can do what he does without being force sensitive, that makes him all the better. A tier. The original leader of the Separatists who created the first droid army is none other than Nute Gunray. This guy is kind of annoying. At the end of the day, he's just a super greedy businessman and war profiteer. He has no backbone and no talent or powers to speak of besides having money. And ultimately, everything he does is either manipulated by Sidious, Dooku, Grievous, or some combination of those three. That leads him to his execution at the hands of Vader on Mustafar. But at least he was the last one to go, for whatever that's worth. That sounds like a D-tier villain to me. Poggle the Lesser is another Separatist leader that died alongside Nute Gunray. The only unique thing going for him is that he's Geonosian. And actually, now that I think of it, that's kind of a bad thing. Maybe it's just me, but I'd hate to be a bug that can barely fly and has to walk with a cane all the time. That's just weird. However, Poggle was important in uniting the Geonosians as one, and was key to producing the Death Star plans, which he helped build. But like I said with Nute Gunray, Poggle was just another pawn all along. He'll be joining his friends in the D tier. Now, most of you may not know this, but Darth Plagueis was instrumental in making the connections and contacts with many of the future Separatist leaders. Once Sidious took Plagueis out, Sidious had an easy time getting all the different companies and systems together. Plagueis might have died a bad death for a freaking Sith Lord, but he still did some cool stuff, most of which is unexplored in canon. Aside from training the greatest Sith of all time, Plagueis had insane powers. As Palpatine noted, Plagueis had found the path to immortality. He just couldn't save himself. And you can read all about it in the Darth Plagueis novel if you haven't already. It's arguably the best Star Wars book of all time, or you can listen to it. I've got an Amazon Audible link in the description where you can get access to thousands of books, including Star Wars, for as little as $8. Anyway, I think the C tier is a good spot for our guy Plagueis the Wise. He needs to do some more on-screen stuff first. And then there's his apprentice, one of the strongest Sith of all time, the leader of the Galactic Empire, one of the undisputed greatest villains of all time. He's insanely powerful, and quite literally the embodiment of evil itself. His lust for power...
Yeah, Palpatine deserves, like, what did he say, like, there was a Super S and a Super F. Palpatine deserves the Super S. This man was unmatched. I haven't been speaking for a while as well. This video is like really good, and I've honestly just been invested in this. But this guy deserves the Super S.
And greed knows no bounds. He wouldn't stop until he had control of the entire galaxy, and that's exactly what he got. Easiest S tier of my life. Real quick, let's talk about some commanders and admirals across different eras of Star Wars. Starting with Admiral Trench. You probably remember him for looking like a massive spider. He was especially memorable after he survived his ship exploding on Christophsis, when he was enhanced with a bunch of robotic parts. Most forget that he was a tactical genius in his own right. After all, his blockade on Christophsis was so impenetrable that it took Anakin and the Republic's best pilots in a revolutionary cloaked ship to take him down. But, like I said, he somehow managed to survive that, so Trench came back to defend Ringo Vinda. His astute analysis analysis is what alerts Count Dooku to the possibility that the inhibitor chips in the clones will be discovered. Technically, because of Trench's insight, Sidious's grand plan of taking over the galaxy was saved. Even though he lacked combat skill, he still had a few tricks up his sleeve that probably would have taken out a lesser Jedi. But unfortunately for Trench, he was facing an angry Anakin Skywalker who was weeks away from becoming Vader. So we really can't blame Trench for that. Trench could easily fall in the C tier, but I think he does just enough to put himself up into the B tier.
Real quick, be sure to join my Discord server. The link is in the description and the top comment. The first 100 members to join will get access to a special giveaway, so join now.
Next, let's talk about two Moffs of the Galactic Empire. Both are on completely different ends of the spectrum. First, there's Moff Gideon from The Mandalorian. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think Moff Gideon is a very unique or good villain at all. In his show, you mostly just see his troopers hunting down Mando. Gideon himself rarely makes an appearance. He doesn't have much combat skill or a ton of tactical brilliance. He repeatedly has the upper hand on Mando, but makes bizarre decisions that allow them to get away. For the sake of the plot, I guess, there's just very little depth to Gideon. The more and more that gets revealed about him, the more you realize he's just an extremely generic character that's being carried simply by the fact that he's being played by a great actor. Like, what are his motivations? Why does he do what he does? What drives him? No one knows. We're just supposed to assume he's bad because, well, he's an Imperial. And that's enough, for Disney anyway.
Yeah, that's something that that favours as well, that biases as well. Like, not just like Star Wars in terms of this, but things like how good the actor is for the character. Like in the Wimpy Kid movies, the Roderick was so good, and like setting the bar high as well. That's, you can base a character off that really good, like Moff Gideon. And then in the last one, all the other actors, like the Roderick actor, people hated that. But it is solely because of the actor. Like, I bet you if it's the first three Diary of One Kid movies, I bet you that if everything was the same screen time, the same watch time, the same script, the same emotions, but a different Roderick, it would not get as much delays, and people wouldn't like the movies as much. That's because actors can like side with characters as well. You know, like a good actor can boost the character up a bit.
But not for me. D tier for you, buddy. It sucks that Gideon carries the title of Moff, because up until The Mandalorian came out, the only depiction we had of a Moff was through Grand Moff Tarkin, and man, he's amazing. In A New Hope, Tarkin, by virtue of controlling the Death Star, is even more powerful than Vader. It's even shown that Vader is being kept on a leash by Tarkin in the movie. That's insane. Almost like how Tarkin has the highest kill count in all of Star Wars, by virtue of destroying Alderaan and Scarif's base. In Rogue One in particular, we get to see Tarkin's political skill as he maneuvers himself into becoming the sole person in charge of the Death Star. In doing so, he outmaneuvered his associate, Director Krennic. Krennic is one of the most compelling villains in all of Star Wars. Tarkin may have gotten the last laugh, but Krennic fought hard while he could. He personally oversaw the construction of the Death Star, ensuring that labor was contracted and that all of the materials were transported there in secrecy, all while enlisting thousands of scientists like Galen Erso to build the super laser, which would be the project's crowning achievement. That's a big task for even the greatest of leaders. But Krennic managed it all despite the numerous setbacks he faced, and with overbearing bosses like Tarkin and Vader breathing it up his neck too. We see throughout Rogue One that Krennic isn't the kind of guy to just sit back and let others manage his affairs for himself. He'd rather deal with things personally, from bringing Galen Erso back into the fold to visiting Edu and Scarif to ensure the Death Star wasn't compromised. Krennic displays the competency of the Empire. After all, how could such a vast war machine run so smoothly throughout the entire galaxy? Because of men like Krennic and women like Dedra Meadro. Dedra is the main antagonist in the Andor TV series. What makes her special is how she climbs through the ranks throughout the show, going from someone with no power to holding an important position in the ISB. She's always had plans for what she would do with power, and now she can't. That makes her all the more dangerous, an underdog with something to prove. At first, you're rooting for her as she fights against the corruption and minor incompetencies in the ISB. Then you grow to hate her as she comes into her own, and that's what makes her such a great character. A villain is only as good as the writing. Tarkin gets an A tier ranking, and Krennic and Dedra will go into the B tier. Serving along with them in the Empire are the Inquisitors.
So far, we know of a few of them through TV shows like Star Wars Rebels and Kenobi, games like Jedi Fallen Order, and different books. First, there's Trilla, the second sister, who had a massive duel with Cal at the end of Fallen Order. The third sister is Reva. We already ranked her. brother. Then the fourth sister just randomly shows up in Kenobi. The fifth brother is actually kind of significant. He wears this massive hat that reminds me of Embo, except he doesn't look nearly as cool as Embo did. Maul easily killed him in Rebels. Maul also killed the seventh sister right alongside her brother. Not her literal brother, but you get the point. The Inquisitor naming system is so stupid. The eighth brother was also there when Maul killed his comrades, but he decided to jump off a cliff and die that way instead. The ninth sister is this big brute that faced Cal earlier in the game on Kashyyyk. She somehow survives being mutilated by Cal in that duel and actually comes back for Jedi Survivor. But I won't spoil anything in case you haven't played yet. And finally, there's Marok from the Ahsoka show. You know what? I think all the Inquisitors deserve an F tier ranking, because they're literally just bodies that serve as lightsaber fodder for the main characters. The only standout is the Grand Inquisitor, and he's not much better. By rank, he's better and more powerful than the rest of the Inquisitors. He helps to train candidates selected for the program, and at least there's some fear factor for him in the first season of Rebels. When I watched the show, I almost started to believe he had some potential to be a decent villain. But he gets killed in the same season too, so I don't know. Grand Inquisitor D tier, everyone else F tier.
Joining the Grand Inquisitor in the D tier is Shin Hati from the Ahsoka series. Maybe it's just me, but I'm not impressed with Shin Hati. From the very start with her duel with Sabine, I could tell she wasn't destined to do much.
She barely has any speaking lines and just kinda exists. Most of the attention she gets is from fans making "I can fix her" memes. I'm sure things will get better for Shin in season 2, but for now she's pretty insignificant. She only exists to follow and obey the commands of her master, Baylan Skoll.
Now Baylan is a far more interesting character. He's able to balance using the dark side without letting it consume him as he tries to reach his seemingly well-intentioned goals. In this way, he's able to master both sides of the Force, making him a Dark Jedi. His goals are also incredibly unique in wanting to permanently end the cycle of war between the Jedi and the Sith. Let's be real, this war has been consistently ravaging the galaxy for tens of thousands of years. To any smart outsider, the galaxy would be better off without them. And so far, until Ahsoka Season 2 comes out, Baylan still has a fair shot at getting there. He hasn't lost yet. C tier. Dr. Hemlock was taken out at the end of the Bad Batch series, but before then, he was a decent villain too. Hemlock is extremely intelligent and always appears calm and collected, but underneath that surface, he's clearly a sociopath. This makes him all the more dangerous, because he's one of the few villains willing to torture or even kill a child, that being Omega. Despite all of his smarts, he wasn't able to keep a step ahead of his enemies like Thrawn, which led to his downfall. D tier. We're almost done, but I've got one more villain to talk about. As a matter of fact, he's joining the greats in the S tier. That villain is Rick the Door Technician. As if being one of the greatest door repairmen in the galaxy isn't enough, Rick has the strength and bravery to attack numerous Jedi. He has over 500 confirmed Jedi kills to his name, if you needed any more convincing.
So now that we've got all the villains ranked, who is the absolute worst? There's a lot of competition at the bottom. There's guys like Snoke and Kylo Ren, Reva and Hux, or even Zero the Hutt. Take your pick. All of them are probably bad enough to qualify as the dumbest, but I've got to go with the almighty Supreme Leader Snoke as the worst villain in all of Star Wars. He barely shows up in the movies, technically 2 if we're being generous, and when he does pop up, he sucks. And we can't forget that Snoke was a puppet leader and that he was completely oblivious to that fact the entire time, which is so unbelievably stupid. It was all too easy for Mary Sue Ray to take him out in approximately half a second. Okay, but what about the best? 3 of the S tier villains have something in common. They serve the same master. And as powerful as our man Rick is, it's pretty clear that his boss, Darth Sidious, is the best villain in all of Star Wars. Throughout every single movie, he's pulling the strings, leading the darkness against the light. The true greatest villain, Darth Jar Jar, deserves an entire video unto himself, so we'll save that for later.
That was a good ass video. He is also getting a sub. Like,